you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Wow. Thank you, Tammy. Okay, Miss Sherry.
I think my problem was because I had worked in the medical field,
Mm-hmm.
I knew basically that I wanted it out.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to dilly dally and wait around. What I wish I would have known though was I had a choice of having immediate reconstruction. No one told
Yeah.
me that. And as a result, I waited and I had two other reoccurrences that required radiation, which damaged my breast tissue. So
Mm-hmm.
when I did have reconstruction, it kept opening up. It
Mm-hmm.
failed because the tissue was damaged so bad. And
Wow.
that's how I ended up with MRSA. But if I would have known my options in the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
because again, maybe it was my fault by saying I just wanted out
Mm-hmm.
without thinking about what other options could I have. If
Mm-hmm.
I would have known now, that's what I would have looked at, because then I would have
Mm-hmm.
been at least had a fighting chance to be able to have some breast.
Mm-hmm.
Not saying that I would go backwards to do it again. Nah, it's done,
Mm-hmm.
but that's what I wish I would have known, because I educated myself probably too much on the cancer, because I'm so computer, and then the medical part of me I had to back away from that,
Okay.
because again, all the side effects, I knew, and
Mm-hmm.
I kind of anticipated with that in mind, because I knew. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
complain to my doctors like I should have.
Mhm.
I suffered a little bit more than I should have,
Okay.
and that was probably my downfall, by doing too much research and kind of anticipating what's going to happen.
Okay.
But out of all this, like I says, it doesn't hurt to educate yourself. But one thing I wish I would have done was
Mm-hmm.
to focus on immediate reconstruction. But I think out time was of the essence in my mind.
Okay. Okay.
And
Can I
one
ask
thing
you? Go
that,
ahead.
that I want
Mm-hmm.
I would like everybody
Mm-hmm.
to kind of recognize is when you're going through chemo, we all think that you're going to be sick. You're all going to be, you're going to be just literally too sick to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
But they have medicine to help you when you get sick. And
Wow.
I think if we would have known that prior to, we
Mm-hmm.
would have been able to say,
Yes.
doctor, we're getting sick. But we assumed that we were going to be sick, so there was no
Mm-hmm.
reason to tell him
Right.
we were sick.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but once we were able to understand that,
Yes.
it was like, when I get chemo, I go home and I'm so sick I can't even
Right.
function. My
Right.
body
Mm-hmm.
just is dry heaving and I'm just sick. And then he said, "Oh, I could give you something for that."
Wow.
And I'm like, "Really?"
Now
You
I
know,
ask.
now I asked, but now at that point of my
Right.
first chemo, I
Mm-hmm.
was done. I didn't even want chemo no more. I said, "I'm done. I'm not going to do it ever again."
Wow.
But all I had to do was tell him I was sick, and he would give me some medicine to help me not be sick when I get home. And so
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a lot of what we mentally already hear,
Right.
and we think that we shouldn't tell him that because he already knows, so we shouldn't have to. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think women should all know that, when you're sick, the doctor can give you something to stop you from getting sick. Now, I won't say you won't never get sick,
Right.
but
Mm-hmm.
you will have the ability not to be dry heaving when
Right.
you
You don't have to suffer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
Wow.
think that's lessons that we've learned.
Yeah.
So what about a support system? Did you have a support system or an advocate
Well,
as you
in
went
the
through
beginning for
the
me,
process?
my mother was my biggest support system.
Mm-hmm.
For years, I've been an only child. So my mother went to every appointment with me, my mother and my dad. When I was sick, like I says, they knew that I couldn't tolerate smelling food, smelling it. So what they would get for me is something like Wendy's, a little kit meal, just a turkey sandwich and a bread, with nothing on it, because they knew that I couldn't even stand it. But
Wow.
I went to a support group with other ladies. But to be honest, the first time I was scared. It really scared me, because they go around and they tell their stories, and some of them had multiple times. And at that time, I was only on my one time. And so to hear other ladies talk about how it came back and that it spread, it scared me. So I didn't go for a while, because that was not my mindset. I didn't want to think, even though it was starting to happen to me, I still didn't want to think that I was going to live like that.
Yeah.
And so I had to keep my head straight for a little while and just let that go, and just depend on my mom, my girls, and my friends, and people like Tammy. Like I said, we got connected right after each other.
Yeah.
So,